Hello everyone and welcome to Global Entrepreneurship Week, day 4, and today we are looking at social entrepreneurship, and I would love to welcome Leigh Wharton, who is the founder of Bubble Enterprises and Social Enterprise Ambassador for the Masood Entrepreneurship Centre. So I'd like to hand over to Leigh. Thank you.
Jess, thanks very much indeed. It's great to be here, and welcome to everyone. Let me share my screen for my short talk this afternoon. Here we go. So yes, looking to talk to you over the next half hour, 40 minutes or so on the different aspects of setting up a social enterprise. I'm going to talk a little about some of the things you need to think about at the beginning of your journey, and then talk about some of the different types of organizational structures, some types of social enterprise that exist, that are there as an option for you to consider, and then briefly touch on impact and give you a chance to ask questions as we go along. So let's get straight into the session. Some of the things to think about. This particular slide, when it's complete, will probably leave you with more questions than answers, but it follows the process that I go through when I work with entrepreneurs who are trying to set up new ventures for the first time. So some of the things to think about, some of your initial drivers, especially in the social context. What are the key core themes of your thinking? Is it a personal interest, or do you have a cause that you want to help support and address and improve? Is it fairly specific? Is it to do with a cause like dementia, for example, or is it more general, climate change, the quality of the waters? So again, it's about understanding the scale and scope. Is it based on your own skills and interests? Are you keen on food and cookery? Do you want to set up a food bank? Is it to do with sport, perhaps working with younger people and helping them develop their sporting skills? And is it you on your own, or is there a small group of you? Is there a team of you looking to initiate this new venture? So understanding some of these early drivers is crucial to how you want to formulate your social enterprise. Then you want to be looking at your aims and objectives. Do you want to grow this venture, or do you want to start small and stay small? One of the social enterprises I work very closely with is a social enterprise cafe. And that's been running now for 15 years, but it hasn't moved location, it hasn't grown in its turnover, but it employs 6 people. We have well over a dozen volunteers. So again, a question is, do you want to grow the initiative, expand, or do you want to diversify, start in one area and then move into others? So again, something for you to think about, and all of these impact on how you might structure the business as a whole. Do you need partnerships? Who are you going to work alongside? Which larger organizations will help you establish what you want to deliver? And then looking further into the future, what sort of future funding do you want? Are you going to require investment? And we'll talk a little bit more detail about funding in a few minutes. And then you want to think about the communities you're going to engage with. Are you going to focus on one community, perhaps one small geography? Or are you going to expand? Are you going to be local? Are you going to grow locally, or are you going to grow nationally? And over what period of time? indeed, we have examples of international charities that have come out of the University of Manchester. And it's an option that we can consider. Are your interests international? Perhaps some of your team, as you're starting out, have contacts, have roots in other countries, and perhaps your initiative can spread far and wide. But as you're going into a community, there will be existing stakeholders already there, perhaps delivering products, services within the same communities you're interested in. And do you want to partner with those to build and grow the support? Or are you going to go in and add additional services? So again, how are you going to work with the existing stakeholders? All to be considered as you look to establish the business. And your vision, what is the vision of this organisation? What are your guiding principles? Are you going to align with some of the UN Sustainable Development Goals, perhaps? Are you going to start with some small principles, more focused, and grow them over time? Have some short-term aims and then some longer-term aims as your vision allows you to develop and deliver more. And so the opportunity to understand where you're coming from and where you're wanting to go with this endeavour is really important. And these last two aspects, perhaps the key parts of the enterprise, the people, who are the main focus of your initiative? Are you providing support and guidance to a community, or are you there to sell into the general community and with your profits and excess do good that way? So you need to have a main focus. Are you going to have volunteer staff, paid staff? That is really a key aspect of how you can pull together the activities within the organisation that you set up. And then perhaps mentors, people to bring into the organisation to give you some guidance, perhaps some advice, perhaps people who have followed a similar journey in the past and can support you as you go forward. Co-founders, we spoke about a team and their requirements, but are you a team of co-founders, or are the owners of the initiative going to be a wide body of members? So perhaps you want to set up a community cafe, perhaps a community pub, perhaps a community food bank, and all members of the community can be owners of the initiative. So what are the memberships and who are the members of this initiative? Not just yourself, but others as well. And then you need to look at getting advice, so advisors. Legal advice, always important. Perhaps as you're starting out, to get the right structures, the right contracts in place. Financial advice, not just bookkeeping, but sourcing of monies, maybe helping you to apply for certain types of finance grants and the like. And then the specialist advice that you might well need. Specialist advice around third sector activity, specialist advice around maybe some of the causes that you're looking to address. When I first started out, one of my social enterprises was involved, and still is involved, within the mental health community. But we weren't mental health experts at all. We sought guidance and advice from people who did understand the situation. And we brought them into our organisation as well. So perhaps you want to look at specialists as well, listen to their support and direction. And lastly, on this particular slide to think about it is your funding. Crucial part, you need an element of financial sustainability. You need to be able to plan into the future to deliver the social good that you're trying to aim at. You need to be sustainable financially. A range of sources of startup monies, perhaps. Are you going to access grants? Are you going to trade? Do you have something to sell, a product or a service? Can you get into trading? Are you going to look to deliver contracts? Are you a service provider of some form where you can access contracts and deliver on behalf of other bodies? Or are you looking at philanthropy, looking at gifts in order to get a start again, enabling you to initiate what you want to do? And then you'll have ongoing sources of income, revenue. You might repeat the startup combination. You might continue looking for grants, continue contracting, continue looking for philanthropy. But you might look for loans, specific loans from specialist third sector providers. You might look to take equity into the business for shares, or you might want some combination of all of those and have a variety of revenue streams in order to enable sustainability. And one area to go away and think about, as I always say, is think about your cash flow. Cash flow is the lifeblood of any type of organisation, and it's really important to plan ahead. So accessing funds, accessing grants, accessing gifts of any sort takes time, and you need to plan ahead. So these are the types of considerations you need to have in mind as you're thinking about the type and nature of social enterprise to start up. All of these have some influence on how you might want to structure the enterprise going forward. I'm talking of the structures, looking to present 4 broad areas that you might wish to consider. So the first being a charity. You might decide that a charity is what you want to establish, overseen through the Charities Commission. Charities will have a board of trustees. So one of the downsides of a charity, perhaps, is that typically trustees don't get paid. So if you're putting all your time and efforts into a charity, you may want to consider how you can earn monies. So that's something to consider. The benefits of a charity, of course, are that there are tax breaks, tax benefits. HMRC and gift aid is one, but other tax benefits as well. And this is where, of course, you need to talk to some advisors on taxation. And what types of charities exist? Well, broadly, there are 2 forms. There's the traditional charity, that has been going for many years, which is broadly built up of two organisations: the charity itself, doing the charitable good, and a trading arm, typically a company limited by guarantee, that can trade and earn monies that are given to the charity that it's associated with. And that's how traditional charities have been historically put together. In recent years, there's charitable incorporated organisations, CIOs. Benefit of the CIO, it is only one entity, so only one level of administration, but has all the charitable benefits as well to it, and the requirements. So again, overseen by the Charities Commission, has a board of trustees and so on. So a charity can be there to deliver good work, can receive gifts, can receive gifts and get a tax benefit from that, deliver into the community. And the principle and concept of a charity is fairly well understood by all. Another option within the social enterprise structure is that our community interest companies. Now, these are trading entities that are overseen by Companies House. They're a standard company when it comes to tax rules, so there's no tax breaks for being a CIC. And indeed, within the Articles of Association, there is a formal asset lock, which demonstrates the social leaning of this particular structure of organisation. So it precludes the ability of removing capital out of the organisation to the shareholders. They can be limited by both shares and by guarantee. And it allows for an element of investment and a return on that investment if people invest equity in the CIC shares. But the returns on the investment are limited to 35% of the dividend declared. So that means that 65% of any declared dividend goes back into the community, and 35% of that declared dividend can go to the shareholders. It's a way of getting a return for an investment to some extent. There'd be an expectation for the normal annual returns in terms of accounts, and something called a KIC 34, which is a impact report that is required by Companies House. But you'd pay standard tax on your profits, excuse me, and you'd pay standard tax considerations on your activities, employ people in the normal way, and but it's a well understood social enterprise. Another social business are the cooperatives, often overlooked, surprisingly so, given Manchester's the home of the cooperative movement. But cooperatives are particularly suitable where you've got many members who may well be owners of the cooperative. So community services, be they shops or cafes or pubs or community centres, where you have many members of the community wanting to be actively involved, then a cooperative is an ideal structure, overseen indeed by the Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA. Again, that's a historic cooperatives have been around many years and are a historic structure of business. It allows for investment. There's community shares structures allowed, so you can get significant capital into a cooperative, and it's a way of spreading ownership across many within the community. Cooperatives UK is an advisory body that supports the creation of co-ops, and those of you interested in this form of structure, again, the advice is there, readily available in terms of establishing the cooperative structure as a way to take an initiative forward. And a fourth area is termed broadly a social business, or a business for good. And this is would be a standard company limited by shares. In recent times, very recent, there's a B Corp certification available for these businesses, and hopefully at the panel in a few minutes there'll be someone be able to expand a little on B Corps. But the underlying principle is to have a amended set of articles of association, again overseen by Companies House. And your social business will formally state within your articles that you are a business for good. You may well put in an asset lock of some form that you can decide yourself. Indeed, I've seen an asset lock saying that 51% of the dividend is to go to the community, 49% of it to the investors. So a similar principle to the kick, but you establish your own asset lock, and you can define it as you feel right for your particular organisation. You may well align yourselves with some of the UN SDGs, or commit to certain forms of impact report. You can say which communities you're going to be supportive of. Again, all of these can come into your amended set of articles. So when you'd set the business up, you'd set it with a standard set of articles that are freely available from Companies House, but then shortly afterwards you could, with guidance, rewrite them, commit to being a business for good, social business, and amend certain aspects of the clauses within the articles, maybe add a few more. So a whole range of potential structures, different types of social enterprise that can be pulled together. There is a question. Yeah, no. So we've had a question come in. I have a business around sustainability. It's currently a limited company. How easy is it to switch to a kick when my business becomes profitable? And what would it mean for me to make that switch? You can transform structures of companies. That is there. Again, Companies House has guidance on how you can do that. You can't do it too many times. I think you can only do it once. But similarly, you can move kicks into charities and vice versa. You can move other organisations into kicks. And what would it mean for you by that switch? Well, from a limited company to a CIC, you'd still be a director. You could still maintain shares. In terms of dividends, again, the kick asset lot would reduce the amount of dividend you could access, but it would guarantee that 65% of it goes into the community. Make no difference to aspects of pay. You'd still need to be involved with HMRC and PAYE. You still need to set up your pensions. That would be the same. So the move in terms of some of the underlying infrastructure between a limited company and a kick are very, very similar. And that's what attracts people to CICs, because they are easily understandable, but as well as being demonstrably a social enterprise by being a kick. So thank you for that question. Happy to field any more as we go along. So, as I say, those are 4 of the broader types of social enterprise structures that exist. Moving really right the way through the spectrum from a charity that might well deliver a social good to a community, supporting dementia, perhaps, as an example of one that I work with, all the way through to a trading organisation, a social business, a business for good, which has a typical share structure, can receive significant future investments through equity, and can pay a return on that investment at a level that commercial investors would find acceptable. That's one of the downsides of the kicks, perhaps, is that sometimes it's difficult to take in commercial equity investment in the future to give a return at the levels that commercial funders would want to see. So just in the last few minutes, I just want to talk a little about impact and some of the ways that organisations can report on impact and the types of impact reporting that exists, using a range of examples that are local. So the first one here, I'm taking In Place of War. In Place of War is a charity established within the University of Manchester, and this is their annual report from 2021, freely available via Charities Commission website, and it's a CIO, it's a charitable incorporated organisation. Is In Place of War. They indeed did start out as a kick, as a CIC, and then transformed into a charity. But you can see this is a significant report, 32 pages, covering a whole range of aspects. In Place of War is a global organisation, so this is an international charity coming out of Manchester. It looks to use artistic creativity in locations that are of places of conflict to encourage positive change, and their initiatives are across 26 countries. And these are just screen grabs from their annual report, as I say, but this particular charity looks at creativity and art. They look at music and cultural spaces. They look at music theatre. They look at developing artists, so developing communities. They look at creative entrepreneurship, and much of what they've done is based on rigorous academic frameworks. So an interesting charity, has a an income 200,000–300,000 a year, delivers good across many countries of the world. And within their annual report, they're looking to cover a range of impact assessments. Going to the other extreme, this is a small local community interest company based in Manchester. It's called Stork CIC, and this is their impact social value report, an example of it. A lot less sophisticated, and they, in terms of their activities, they work with and provide services to families with children. And they work in 5 small areas of Greater Manchester: Cheetham Hill, Harper Hay, Openshaw, Gorton, Fallowfield. And they have some metrics in place where they can show what they've done in terms of delivering parcels within Manchester and Salford, the numbers of the people that they've engaged with. So this impact report looks different, but addresses the same principles of whom they're working with, the areas, how much activity, their volunteers and their staff. So they can say that 64% of their volunteers were full-time employed people. So they're running this community interest company mainly on volunteers. So an interesting difference between a 26-country international charity and a small community interest company, which are both based out of Manchester. And it's this range of initiatives, range of activities that can be serviced through third sector organisations, and determining which structure to have is down to yourselves. And then the final one, the third one, is again another order of magnitude. This is the Big Life Group. This is based out in Old Trafford. And the Big Life Group actually has a number of significant charities under its umbrella, and perhaps has an income somewhere between 15 and 20 million per year. And again, this is one of their impact reports from a couple of years ago, concentrating on key measures. This particular extract is taken from their work that they've done within the Longsight community. And this next slide takes a couple of their pages, one looking at the self-help, peer support, a mental health charity within the Big Life Group umbrella that does significant works, delivering contracts as well as direct drop-in support as well. And then the third area, which many of you may have come across yourselves, is the Big Issue North. So you'll have seen the vendors on the streets, the Big Issue North vendors. And this particular independent charity, again under the Big Life Group umbrella, has last year got an income of somewhere like 700,000–800,000, supporting the Big Issue North vendors across the northwest of England. So again, orders of magnitude. So here we have a charity, Big Life Group, but indeed a number of charities, all regulated by the Charities Commission, and overall having an income somewhere in the region of 20 million, focusing on a range of services, be they community-based, be they mental health, be they homeless, and a way to get people back into mainstream activities across primarily across the north of England. So again, partner organisations to consider. The question is, if I start a social enterprise, but I'm not profitable, how do I make an impact report? Well, your impact need not necessarily be financial impact, so profitability and the social good that you do may not necessarily be directly linked. If you're not profitable and you're cash flow negative, you may well have a question around sustainability. But in order to do your impact report, you want to concentrate on the social impacts that you're having, the good that you're doing, what are you delivering, how many people are you engaging, what benefits are those individuals acquiring. The impact report for our cafe is around the numbers of volunteers that we engage with, the amount of wages that go into the mental health community, the amount of money we spend on supporting local businesses, suppliers of food, so that we use local bakeries, we use local sandwich providers and the like. So making an impact can be separated from being profitable. Hopefully that's addressed the issue. I've answered the question as I've understood it, and it's not a slightly different question, so hopefully that's fine. We've literally got another 5 minutes at the most to wrap the session up, but please, now is the chance to ask a few questions. So one question that's just come through is, are there fundamental differences between social and for-profit founders? I'll answer that, and then I will take that into the panel discussion later as well. But in terms of individuals, certainly the founders of social businesses have a distinct clarity around what the social good that they want to do. I think the difference is that with a social entrepreneur, you may be wearing two hats. Your drive to do a social good, however you want to describe that, and the need for you to run an entity that is sustainable, financially sustainable, and ethically sustainable. The for-profit businesses are predominantly focused around financial returns. They may not necessarily have a social good embedded within the organisation. They may well add to social benefits, but it's not I don't think it's a core driver of the founders. So it would be my view that to deliver a profitable, sustainable social enterprise is a broader challenge than a straightforward for-profit enterprise. Okay, Jess, if there's no more questions coming through, then perhaps we could just stop the workshop session and start preparing for the panel. Yeah.
Hi everyone, welcome back or welcome to any new viewers. Today's session is about social entrepreneurship for people, planet and profit, and I'm really excited to introduce Leigh Wharton, who is the founder of Bubble Enterprises and the social ambassador for the Masood Entrepreneurship Centre. And Leigh is going to introduce our exciting guest speaker panel. Thank you, Leigh.
Yes, thanks very much indeed. And again, welcome everyone. Today's panel, we have 4 social entrepreneurs, and they've got a wealth of experience which they're looking to share with you. And I'll simply go straight into asking them to spend a couple of minutes introducing themselves, introducing their ventures and businesses, and we'll move on after that with some questions. So Donna, please, can I ask you to talk first?
Of course, thank you, Leigh, and hi everybody. My name is Donna Oakle. I run a organisation called UK for Good. I'm also a B leader, which means I've completed a programme with B Lab, the not-for-profit arm of B Corp, so that I can work with businesses on their B Corp journey. I've had over 35 years in business, and I've worked for family businesses and the Queen's Bank, big corporation, and set up and run a charity. And during that time, it's become abundantly clear how important it is that businesses act as a force for good. So focus on not just profit, but purpose and people and planet and prosperity for all. And so we help businesses who want to become B Corps. We use the principles and the framework that you need to use to become B Corp, and we help businesses essentially better understand and improve their impact on their people, on their communities, and of course on their planet. And this is super important in a world where we've got some really urgent crises, obviously the climate emergency and societal crises that we as businesses can address. And the B Corp is a really exciting movement that's growing, and it's growing particularly quickly in the UK. And B Corps are for all for-profit businesses, including social enterprises. And really keen to talk to you more about that.
Donna, thank you very much indeed. Next introduction, please. Duncan, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and Bounce Back Foods?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Duncan. I run Bounce Back Food, and we've been fighting food poverty since 2014. Our community cookery school teams teach people how to cook. We do meal drives. We help people get jobs in the food sector and do market events and things like catering as well. Over the years, we've worked with a range of beneficiaries and taught over 5,000 people how to cook. We do stuff in schools, sheltered accommodation. And now the aim is for us to replicate the model in different locations so that we can fight food poverty nationwide. So that's like the journey that we've gone on over the last 8 years. But yeah, happy to share my experience of social enterprise, specifically within the food sector. And it's really good to see that there's a lot of people interested in setting up a social enterprise in the various different forms that Leigh's mentioned earlier on.
Duncan, thanks very much indeed. Now, Maggie, can you do your short introduction? I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, of course. So hi, everyone. I'm Maggie. I am an alumni of Manchester University, and I would like to think relatively recently as well. So I run the non-profit organization called Girls in Charge, which helps women build confidence and entrepreneurial skills through gamification. And actually, the entire thing kind of sprung out of my experience of student entrepreneurship at Manchester, but that is a very long story. So with Girls in Charge, we launched back in 2019, and we have now upskilled over 5,000 beneficiaries across 4 different countries. And in the first 3 years, we only spent £600 doing it. So impact doesn't necessarily mean you have to spend a lot of money, you have to have a lot of resources, but it is possible with a lot of passion and great people. Like, honestly, people is so important, but I would love to talk more about that later on.
Maggie, thanks very much indeed. And finally, Josh, if you could just say your few introductory words, that'd be great.
Sure. I'm Josh, founder of Stand for Socks, and we sell socks, believe it or not. I'm co-main for too bad I'm away at the moment. But yeah, we're a social enterprise that every time we sell a pair of socks, we donate a pair to someone experiencing homelessness. And that's kind of evolved over the years to include refugees in Ukraine. We also support frontline workers during the pandemic. So it's kind of more of a definition of supporting people in need with every pair we sell. We operate as kind of an e-commerce online model. We do socks with like Liam Gallagher on, and we work with sort of Ed Sheeran and fluent people on socks. So
well, I think we've got a short technical hitch there with Josh having frozen. Give him a moment to get back, if at all. No, doesn't look like it. So let's move on then. Let's Maggie, you were saying in your short intro that you created impact in your early days with very little money. Do you want to go into some detail on that for us, please?
Sure. So it really started with Rejection, actually. So Girls in Charge was never supposed to be its own thing. We were supposed to be part of a much larger organization. But after a few months of speaking with them, trying to work out the details, and they were very enthusiastic about the project, and we were volunteering our time to do this. So after a few months, they said, actually, no, we don't want to do it anymore. So having spent all of this time, energy, and passion to create a proposal, create something that we thought had legs, at least, it was really disheartening to have that rejection. So my co-founder and I thought, you know what, let's each put 50 quid into this and see what happens. So we launched with one website. So 50 quid each gave us one website. And we reached out to 5 different university societies at that time, not even university admin, because, we were kids. They were not going to take us seriously. So we reached out to the societies who had the reach already to work with them. And we launched in Oxford, LSE, Manchester, Leeds, and Westminster. So like a nice geographic locations across England, at least, So 3-month project. That went pretty well, and by month 4 we got invited to the House of Lords. And at that point we thought, we can't really shut this thing down anymore. We've done the 3-month project, now what? So we thought, okay, we'll do it for another academic year. And we did. We grew it a lot, quite a lot. We had, I think, about 20 to 30 societies in kind of the second half of the year, and COVID hit. So what do? You go online. Not great for gamification and interaction and gamified workshops. We thought, oh, this is going to kill the initiative. But actually, we were able to use that opportunity to reach out to more countries, have more diverse participants, different backgrounds, different cultures. And it worked out so much better than we could ever have hoped. And, that only cost the Zoom subscription. So we had a very small team at the beginning. So for the first kind of probably about 8-9 months, there was just me and my co-founder, and then we gradually grew to a team of 5. Earlier this year we were a team of 15, but when it gets that big, the team dynamic changes. So you learn a lot about management throughout this process as well. And now we cut the team back to something smaller, more agile. But creating impact, yeah, you know, the actual money that is ours, literally that first £50. So then the money for the Zoom came about because a corporate asked, we saw these bright pink posters at Westminster University. These workshops look really cool. Could you come and do it in our company? And we said, sure, can you give us some money, please? And at that point, you know, we didn't have a legal structure. It was a grassroots movement. And we just asked for a donation, whatever that donation might be. So they gave us £250. That covered the Zoom subscription and the website renewal for the next year. So it was really about getting creative, clever, and having the right people with the drive to push it forward and just really play around with the idea. It was never supposed to be a business. It never did I think this is where it's going to go. But we got to last year, we had quite significant impact built on £600. And we thought, right, now what? How do we scale that impact? Because sure, another £600 can get us through another 3 years, but it's not going to scale. So we turned into a social enterprise and we thought, right, can we do some corporate workshops and charge for these? And also, how much do you charge? So we've been playing around with the pricing, seeing how much people are willing to pay. But literally, even before we started advertising, I was having a conversation with someone who worked at Fiverr about International Women's Day, and they were going to feature me and feature the initiative. They said, this would be really cool for our community. So we ended up from having no clients to having international listed corporation as our first client. And it just kind of built from there, right? We test the waters with them and have a very brutally honest conversation. So how did that actually go? What did you think about it? And built it up from there. So it is a continuing journey. I am not claiming to be an expert here. I'm just, you know, sharing how it's gone so far. It might all just come tumbling down at some point, but so far it's gone well.
Maggie, thanks very much indeed. It's it's the fun and the entertainment of startups. That's part of the joy of it. So and I think you put that across really, really well. I think it's a nice segue into the next question I want to ask Duncan, because Duncan, you can tell us a little bit about what support you sought and accessed in your early days as well. That would be really good to hear.
Yeah, happy to. And I guess starting off thinking immediately where you're at, and with Manchester University, you know, the Venture Further programme, lots of support that your lecturers and other people can offer was certainly one of the forms of support that we benefited from in the early days. But also in terms of a social enterprise, I know that me and Josh both went on programs run by the School for Social Entrepreneurs. That's a fantastic organisation that offers support for early stage social entrepreneurs. They run learning programs. There are small grants that are available that can help you to test ideas. We also have like a trade up program where you're beginning to develop your trading revenue, and then also a scale up program as well when you're more established and you're employing people and want to take your ideas to a bigger audience. So would thoroughly recommend looking for support that the School for Social Entrepreneurs provides, and also Unlimited too, spelled UNLTD. They also help with early stage social entrepreneurs and small pots of funding to help test ideas and to get you going. But as Maggie said, you can achieve a lot with a very small amount. And the first grant that we received was like £200, and it enabled us to run our very first market event with food that we then donated to the nearest food bank. So there's lots that you can do on a shoestring, but good to know about those other providers of support as well.
Duncan, thanks very much indeed. Yes, I think that's a really practical lesson for people that are looking to move into the social entrepreneur ventures. And Donna, as a provider of support, would you like us to expand on what you do and a little bit more detail on the B Corps, please?
Yeah, for sure, be happy to. So B Corps are businesses that consider their impact on their communities, on their employees, and on the environment. And it's a growing movement. So there's about 5,500 B Corps across the UK, across the world, and about 1,000. We've just celebrated the 1,000th B Corp in the UK. What's really interesting is that becoming B Corp, and you know, the lines between B Corp, which are businesses acting as a force for good, and social enterprise and charity sector are becoming wonderfully merged and blurred. And the reason I think that's so exciting is that pretty well every commercial enterprise is thinking about their impact, not just on the bottom line, but on all of their stakeholders. And the world really needs that. You know, the world's is in a pickle right now. To become B Corp, it's a rigorous process, and lots of people think it is too hard. But actually, whether you're a tiny organization, and when we went through the B Corp process as a startup, and you can go through as a startup, it was a great way to structure the business in a way that was aspirational and was right. So it comprises 5 sections. The first is governance, and then you go on to workers, and then communities, the environment, and customers. And it's a really great free to access online tool, a framework that anybody can use. Even if you don't become B Corp certified, it's a great way to understand where you are, where you'd like to be, and how you can get there. And the B Corp community is wonderfully caring and sharing. You know, Duncan, you mentioned about support from others, and Maggie too. There's a whole host of collaboration out there that people are really willing to share. It's not that, you know, when I was at school, it was hide your homework. It's this, I found this idea, it works really well to engage customers or investors. And actually, one of the advantages of becoming B Corp, not only is it the only globally recognized certification that considers your impact across all areas of your business, but investors are looking to invest in B Corps because they're considered lower risk and they outperform. So B Corps have higher levels of growth and turnover and profitability, much lower levels of employee attrition, higher levels of innovation. So they're considered lower risk and higher performing. So investors are really interested. And I've heard a couple of private investors recently say to me, do you know any B Corps in this sector? Because we're keen to invest, but we only want to invest in B Corps. And actually lenders offering lower cost of capital. So it's a great way of attracting good employees and keeping them, high levels of customer attraction and retention. It is hard, it's very doable. We help businesses become B Corps, from tiny businesses to, you know, much larger businesses. And it's just, I think you can tell I'm a real keen advocate. It's a great thing to do.
Donna, thank you. Yeah, no, that sounds really interesting. It's certainly from my perspective, it's a relatively new initiative, and I think it's something that we all need to know a lot more about. So I think promoting it is essential. We have a few questions from the audience, and I'm just going to pick them out and throw them at you in no particular order. So there's one here starting off. What is your favourite aspect of being a social entrepreneur? Who wants to pick that one up, Maggie?
Okay, I can pick that up. So I have an issue with the term social entrepreneur because I may seem like a very social person, but at times I don't want to be a social person. So like I prefer the term impact entrepreneur because it is very much about what we're doing, right? You're doing it for the impact. Anyway, that's just semantics. But what is my favorite part about doing this? It's getting to try things out, right? It's not just social entrepreneurship, it is entrepreneurship in general. You get to create things, you get to see what happens if you do this, if you go into this market, if you create this service. Sometimes it fails. And that is one of the most difficult lesson I had to learn through entrepreneurship, is that sometimes you fail. Because in our schooling system and having Asian parents, you do not fail. I got all the way through university knowing that I do not fail. It's ingrained in how I function, how I think. But actually failure is so important for learning. So you go through the school system, you get straight A's, then what? You think you're doing great, but actually in real life, in the real world, solving problems means sometimes you fail, but with that failure, you get to better solutions and you get to open other opportunities. So for me, the best part about entrepreneurship and social entrepreneurship in general is that learning, because you are always, and I'm sure Duncan and Donna will tell you, you are always learning new skills, new things, new knowledge, meeting different people. And I love not being the smartest person in the room. I love being the dumb one in a room and just picking up new terms and new fun things to explore. So yeah, I think it is a very fun activity to pursue. So I know one of the issues when you're at university is, how do I manage my time? Why should I do it? Do it for the fun of it. Don't do it because you're so serious about it. I think when you're really serious about, being serious is great. It's good, but also don't take it too seriously. Enjoy the process. Don't just focus on the outcome, because that is, when the outcome doesn't go your way, that is going to hurt. But if you think of it as a experiment, think of it as an experience, then I think the outcome will probably go your way anyway, and you enjoy the journey.
Maggie, thank you. That's really good. I like that very much. So Duncan, what's your favourite aspect of what you're doing at the moment?
I think for me, it's being able to solve problems for your beneficiaries, and particularly as being a social entrepreneur, the speed at which you can make change. And for me, I started out as a volunteer at a food bank, and then seeing things that I wanted to change, and then being able to do that. I think that's really rewarding, in particular when you get the feedback from beneficiaries. So I think that's the main thing for me, and the speed at which you can make things happen as well. In particular, when you've set something up and every day you're taking decisions on how you can scale something or test new ideas. And as Maggie referred to, it's a very creative process, and one that's really rewarding as well.
Okay, we've a few more questions coming in now, so let me go on to the next one. What's been the hardest thing about setting up a social enterprise? So looking at the other extremes, Donna, have you got a view on what has been the hardest thing to set up social enterprise?
That really depends on your mindset, and Maggie gives me a great segue into this. I would say managing your own expectations. Can I make a book recommendation here, Leigh? Because I've had this book and I'd recommend it to anyone. Yvonne Chouinard, founder of Patagonia, Let My People Go Surfing. And it's been on my bookshelf for ages. I've got loads of books. He calls himself the reluctant businessman. He set up the most incredible business in Patagonia and has just left it to his only shareholder, who he describes as the earth. How incredible is that? And so managing expectations, I'd say, I run a business. I run a business, like Maggie says, that has an impact on its people, on our communities, and on the planet. And I think most of us in this room kind of pretty convinced they can change the world. And I am, and we are. And so it's that I want to change the world, and I can change the world for good. And Yvonne Chouinard says, if you don't like the game you're in because you're not winning, develop another game and you'll always be the winner. And so it's like Maggie said, well, tried a team of 15, that didn't really work, I shrunk it. So the hard thing is managing your expectations. If you start out thinking, there's just this huge problem, and you know, Duncan, you've probably seen this, food poverty. I mean, there are huge problems in the world. We can't solve them as individuals. Together we can. So I would say managing expectations, but believing in yourself and having the courage to change the world, because you can. Not all of it, not all at once, but you absolutely can make a difference in whatever way you want. And for me, that's the starting point. The question to ask is, what difference do I want to make in the world? And work back from there as to what business you set up.
Donna, thank you. Yeah, that's really good. Thanks for that. Duncan, a question for you. It says here, how do you balance the vision of building an ethical, purpose-driven social enterprise versus making enough profit to ensure the business part functions and can afford to create impact?
Yes, it's tough and really links with the last question, you know, the most difficult things. And I suppose like in our case, for me, the reality of you graduate and you still have to pay rent and bills and everything else. So I personally wasn't able to go full time on the social enterprise until 2.5 years in, but still was able to work on things in the evenings and at the weekends. And when you're doing something because you feel it's your purpose and you desperately want to make an impact on, in our case, food poverty, you know, you put in the hours and you make things work in that way. And I guess then when you start to scale and you start to think about growing and offering different services, then there is that need, like was mentioned in the question, to balance supporting your beneficiaries, but also supporting a team of people around you. And I think that that's one of the things that you learn over time, and then can begin to, I suppose, offer different things to different audiences. And so as a social enterprise, our primary aim is to support our beneficiaries, people living in food poverty. But actually, as a community cookery school, we're able to offer a range of products. So we've published 3 cookbooks over the years. We've got a couple of series of a podcast, which we get corporate sponsors for. So you can begin to think about how different audiences that you're working with can support in different ways. But I think crucially, as a social enterprise, you're always thinking about, well, how can this impact our beneficiaries and how can we support more people? So it's a constant challenge, but one where when you're so aligned with your mission, the determination is to work through those challenges and to figure those things out so that you can support more people. So yeah, there's lots to think about and lots to think through. And, you know, going back to what Maggie said, it feels like every day you're learning something. And even, you know, like 8 years into this, every day you're kind of picking up new things and trying to figure out different challenges. And that's, I guess, as a social entrepreneur, one of the things that I really enjoy as well. Hopefully that kind of answers that. It's quite tricky.
Yeah, no. Duncan, thank you. That's good. There's another question for you, I think, here, Maggie. This is coming back to impact, and it says, how do you measure and define your successes and know that you've made an impact? And it says outside the impact report, so put the actual formal reporting of it together, but how do you know that you've been successful and made an impact?
This is a fun question that Donna and I have spoken about many times. So what is impact? I was literally at an academic conference this morning talking about what is impact, and all the academics were like, well, there's so many ways to define it, right? How are we talking about impact? So there was this really lovely paper about how entrepreneurs measure like the impact for themselves, and they do this by like curating a memory box, almost like thank you notes, Facebook posts, LinkedIn messages, these sort of things. Like, how do you know you're making a difference? Well, when I started, if I'm making a difference to one person who shows up to the workshop, I know that my time wasn't completely wasted. Like, I know I made a difference to someone at least. So it depends on how you are looking at impact. Obviously, there's like all of the impact measurement stuff or impact reports and the formalization of impact, but also what is impact to you? How do you think about impact? What is it that will bring you joy? Like, so when you're thinking about creating a product, a service, a social enterprise, what is it that you want to do? What's your selfish reason for doing it, right? Because if you think about it, I have personally benefited so much from this journey as well as helping others. Like, I built an amazing network. I met Donna. I actually met Josh many years ago. I don't think he remembers. I was like such a kid. But it's what is impact? So you need to think about impact from many different perspectives. Impact to you personally. Don't forget that you are part of this equation. Impact to those that you want to, like, those who are your audience, and then impact to the wider community. What does this actually mean? What does it change in the world? And that third question is a very difficult question to answer, and more likely than not, it doesn't change that much, but it changes something a little bit. And if everyone can do that little bit to make that difference, like collectively, it's a big difference. So it's just about thinking through these issues, creating your own KPIs for impact. It doesn't have to be, you know, very strict, very formal, very codified. It is very much about who do you want to make a difference to, and then just go from there, see what happens. I think when you try and start off with loads, I know they teach you this at business schools, but I know that you're supposed to do all of these things, but just have a play with it first, and don't drive out that passion with all of these business school teachings. I know I'm really bad. Like, I am literally doing a doctoral degree in the business school, but yeah, don't let the formal business education drive out the passion you have right at the beginning. Just have a go, see what happens.
Great, Maggie, thank you. That's good. That's good. Donna, do you want to add a little there?
Yeah, if that's okay. We work a lot on impact. B Corps have to produce an impact report each year, and I think you're dead right, Maggie, have a go, but it is fairly simple and really important to measure your impact, not just for you to understand how you've made a difference in the world, but really importantly to your stakeholders, so to your customers, your clients, any potential investors, clearly your employees and your communities. And a really simple way to do that is look at what's called the triple bottom line, so people, planet, profit. And for me, the starting point is to understand where you are today. So for example, how are you going to know as a business or a social enterprise you're making a difference to the planet? How about starting by understanding either something as simple as measuring your carbon footprint? You can do that for free. And even to say, okay, we're going to reduce our carbon emissions over the next 12 months, or we're going to reduce waste, or we're going to buy less plastic. So there are really simple ways, and I would encourage anybody just to look at, if you put B Corp impact report, there's a whole host of brilliantly inspiring impact reports to get some ideas. On people, there's all sorts of ways you can demonstrate your impact on people and communities. Volunteering, you know, Duncan, you mentioned working with corporates, and how can you volunteer your time, skills, or even give money to other community organisations, charities. So you can say, okay, today the number's 0, or the carbon footprint is, for example, 3 tons, whatever it might be. It's a number. Here we are today. Let's be ambitious and try and increase or reduce whatever you're trying to do by XT% or XT number. There's an element of just be aspirational, and I call it realistically aspirational, and have a go, but having those targets based on understanding where you are today gives some real, I think, accountability and momentum to, we've done a bit of it. What can we do more of to be better or reduce our impact? And certainly, in my work in the B Corp space, it's really important to follow that journey of understanding, improving, and part of that, as Maggie says, will be, I don't use the word failing, I use the word learning, understanding, learning, improving, repeat, understanding, learning, improving, and it never stops. There's no such thing as perfect. But when you see, as Duncan has done, we tried a bit of a cookery school, and that really made an impact. The important thing for me is to understand the impact you've made from the recipient's perspective. So I don't know if my work with an organisation has been great. It was great that they turned up, but turning up or the transaction of work is an output. The difference is the impact, the difference you make to people or the environment. But the only way you can do that is by asking them, whether it's anonymously or employee survey or a customer survey or a client feedback form. I can't measure that impact. It's their view as to how much difference, if any, we've made to them. So it's a combination of both. Have a go and be aspirational about your potential, I think.
Donna, thank you. Yes, I think that's really good guidance there. So we're coming towards the end. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm going to have one last question each of you to wrap things up. And again, it's taken from the audience. So there's one here, I think, for you, Donna. If you could give yourself any advice looking back to the start, what would you tell yourself?
Go change the world. I wish I'd have done what I'm doing now. I swear I've only just realised what I want to be when I grow up. It's a bit late in the day. I wish, Maggie's laughing, she knows it's true. I really wish I understood the power of business to act as a force for good, whether you're a social enterprise or a business that is B Corp. So go change the world and understand the power of you, the power of collaborating with the right people, the power of asking for help. But you can do it. Go do it. We need it more than ever.
Thank you. Thanks, Donna. This one is specifically for you, Duncan. Your name is in the question. For Duncan, how did you manage your time alongside working and stay motivated to work on your social enterprise?
It was very difficult, yeah. The only thing I could do to really test the idea was to put in the time in the evenings and at weekends. And I guess for many students, that'll be a similar thing, right? You can't just drop everything and expect your social enterprise or business or whatever you're thinking of setting up to just be, fully established in a matter of weeks. It is a process. Someone at the start told me it'll take about 3 years to properly establish your organization and be able to start to think about growing. And it's strange because in my head, certainly I had this idea of, you set something up and things will happen really quickly, but actually there's a lot of graft that goes into it. And then, depending on who your employer is, they might be open for you to taking a part-time role and then you increasing your hours on your own project, or things might scale really quickly. And actually, it's a different experience for everyone. You might be able to go full-time a lot quicker, or, you might get some support from the university early on and be able to do things much quicker, or do things while you're studying, which kind of links to what Donna was saying. Just get started as soon as you can, I think, is the main thing. And if you've got that passion for it, you'll figure things out.
Duncan, thank you. And Maggie, perhaps you could just spend a little while telling us about some of the challenges that you have overcome from the start of your activities.
I think, and this is something that most students will face, right at the beginning of starting Girls in Charge, credibility was an issue, right? I was a student, who's going to take you seriously? And, you know, you have to do a lot of convincing, and it's taken this many years to build up our reputation, build up the impact, you know, get all the awards for the universities to eventually, like the actual central university admin, to even take calls with us. So credibility definitely was a big challenge, but it didn't stop us from doing what we wanted to do. It just made us think, okay, how do we reach our audience without having to go through these very set in the old ways guys, right? How do we do it quickly, innovatively, and reach the people we want to reach? So I think to overcome that particular challenge, it was really about speaking to our audience. You know, you need to know who you want to be working with, who are your beneficiaries, and start there. So forget about everything else, start with who's going to benefit, because otherwise what's the point of a social enterprise? Other hurdles, I mean, no money. So we did have to get very creative again, and just building that up and keeping going, right? We have been very positive in today's session, but there will be days where you think, should I really? I see Duncan and Donna nodding. Like on the live stream, you don't see everyone else whilst others are talking, but they are nodding. There will be very tough days where you think, is this worth it? Is this worth my time? Is this worth my effort? Is it worth so many people pouring their hearts into this? And you pick yourself up, you sleep on it, you reevaluate the situation. But I think those reflectional moments are actually very important. I recently did a masterclass for Tatler on social impact, and I had to reflect on what my top advice is. And it was slow down. Like, what is the advice to myself? Slow down, you know, do things, but also every few months take a day to just look back on what's happened, how that's gone, reflect on it, learn from it. And, you know, as Donna and Duncan have been saying, you know, you have to keep building it. And as you do that, you have to learn, right? So slow down, learn, and be creative.
Maggie, thank you. And thank you, everyone. Coming towards the end of the session, it's been hugely inspirational and interesting to listen to the different perspectives. Donna, thank you very much indeed for your time.
You're very welcome.
And Duncan, and good luck with your bounce back foods and some of the initiatives I know you've got going. So thank you for your time this lunchtime. It's been much appreciated. And finally, Maggie, thanks very much for contributing from sunny Madrid.
It's not sunny, it's rainy.
And taking the time to join us. It's been much appreciated. Thank you all. And I'll hand back to Jess to wrap it all up.
Thank you, Leigh, and thank you everyone for joining us. Honestly, really insightful answers to those questions. Thank you so much for joining us. If you'd like to get involved and start a social business, we do have the Venture Further Awards, which are now currently open for applications. And we do have a category specifically for social businesses, which is the social category. So one last time, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us. And if you would like any more information, you can visit our website, which will be popped in the comments. So have a lovely day, everyone, and thank you.
Thank you.